Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Right now, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean are two atmospheric rivers expected to bring rain to California this weekend. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Scripps Institution of Oceanography and the Air Force hosted a meeting today to explain how they monitor such weather systems. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge has more.
On Saturday, Air Force pilots in California will take off in a C-130J, a heavy plane similar to a cargo plane, and fly out to sea and over atmospheric rivers. They are expected to make landfall that day.
Basically, we're flying aircraft that are flying over top of the atmospheric rivers, and we're dropping weather instruments in them called dropsondes. They collect temperature, pressure, wind direction and wind speed, which is also important, and the moisture. And it's an entire profile from where it's launched from the aircraft all the way down to the surface of the ocean.
Atmospheric rivers are weather systems that can transmit a huge amount of airborne moisture to California, where it falls as precipitation. Rickard said the dropsondes that measure the atmospheric river look like cardboard cylinders. They're equipped with a parachute to slow it down when they're dropped from a plane at 30,000 feet.
If it falls to the ocean, the chute comes out of it and then basically keeps it from flopping around in the atmosphere. So it's following the correct position.
The same kind of monitoring devices are released on land, often from Scripps Pier, to monitor atmospheric rivers as they move across the land. Anna Wilson is the Atmospheric River Reconnaissance Coordinator for the Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
And what we've been able to learn from that is exactly how intense these storms are, how they're oriented, and how fast they're moving.
Being able to better predict the development and movement of these rivers in the sky will help California's water supply. Knowing how and when their resulting rains will fall means being able to create reservoirs to store a lot more water. But we've got a ways to go before we know how many rivers a wet season may bring.
I think right now we wish that we were a lot better at that, and there's a lot of ongoing work with California Department of Water Resources, with Scripps and other institutions going into really trying to make that better.
Atmospheric rivers bring up to 65% of California's seasonal precipitation. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
As people across California prepare for more rain, cleanup is underway in the south. At least 9 people were killed in storms from Mississippi to Georgia. Chris Wynn has the latest.
Dozens of tornado strikes in several states Thursday as severe storms swept across the south.
Oh my God.
In Selma, Alabama, a huge tornado left behind widespread destruction. Rescue and cleanup efforts are now underway. The governor says at least 7 people in the state were killed. Further south in Mount Vernon, residents described the panic as the danger came closer.
I got the alert on my phone that a tornado warning was going to hit, and just out of nowhere, I heard a sound I never heard before. It sounded like a freight train come through here, and the wind picked up so strong. I had to jump out, and I ran out because everything was shaking like never before.
In West Harrodsburg, Kentucky, a bird's eye view shows how much damage an EF1 tornado caused when it came through at 100 miles per hour. Resident Jacob Long says he's one of the lucky ones who came back to find part of his home still standing.
You see things caved in, couldn't really see the back of the house or much of the front of the house, so you weren't sure.
Meanwhile, out west, severe flooding is expected in parts of an already saturated Northern California as residents brace for another atmospheric river-fueled event this weekend. Areas of Monterey County have been ordered to evacuate, but some residents say they'll take their chances.
I think the house is high enough off the ground. We have a couple sandbags laid out and just going to wait it out.
Chris Wynn, KPBS News.
Historic droughts and now flooding are likely evidence of the dramatic climate data revealed in 2 reports. We'll have more on that coming up, along with your wet weekend forecast. Sidewalk vending laws have been in effect in many parts of San Diego since June, but that didn't include the beaches and coastal areas until today. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says coastal business owners are hopeful about the latest update, but vendors are frustrated.
When San Diego's street vending ordinance took effect in June, many vendors found a new place to set up shop.
Well, we got a lot more vendors here because all the people who were inland came here, and all the other beaches had the same thing happen.
Denny Knox is president of the Ocean Beach Main Street Association.
And I think a lot of the vendors were, they took advantage of an opportunity where there was no oversight. They didn't have any rules. And so they said, well, for as long as it lasts, we'll do this.
But now there will be oversight in beach communities, starting with a few weeks of educational outreach to vendors. After that, they could face citations, just like the ones that are already being handed out to vendors in Balboa Park and the Gaslamp Quarter.
And they told us we can't vend anymore, even like before summer and after summer.
Jimmy is one of the street vendors still running his business in Ocean Beach. He didn't want to use his last name, but says he doesn't see the ordinance as a fair balance. He has a street vending permit, but under the law, he'll have to move out of the high-traffic beachfront spot he's in right now. He says he's frustrated that there's nowhere else in the city where he can legally sell and make enough profit.
I want to be my own boss or my own business one day. Hopefully they change, they change their mind to make us stay here or bring some kind of new rule. Only 2 days a week at least they can be here.
There was a recommendation by the city to designate entrepreneurship zones for the vendors. Jimmy says he's still waiting to hear more about that. The city is still accepting applications for permits. In the meantime, park rangers will start citing coastal vendors on February 1st. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
People who take the train between San Diego and Orange counties have had to use other options for months now because the tracks are closed for repairs. And they'll have to stick to those other options for a while longer thanks to rain delays. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne found out how passengers are coping.
Buses have been taking passengers back and forth between Oceanside and Irvine since the track repairs began in September. The service is called a bus bridge. Tanzil Khan rode the bus bridge a few times.
The most important thing I realized as soon as I got on the bus that the bus driver is professional and has a kind demeanor.
She says she especially liked that the first thing the bus driver addressed was safety.
He said to pull the yellow I think it was some kind of gear to halt the bus in case he gets a heart attack or some kind of debilitating, epilepsy or seizure or something like that.
Ken lives in Oceanside but teaches online in Orange County, sometimes requiring some travel.
I think it's a very efficient way to to save on carbon print, to not have more cars on the street and save on gasoline.
The only downside, Ken says, there aren't as many time slots available for the buses. She found herself having to wait 3 hours until her bus would depart. Tron Bia travels to LAX and says he's come across the buses being sold out.
Yeah, I have a ticket for 12:30, but it's sold out, so I think the next connection is at 4:30. So if you want to get on the train earlier, you better Uber or Lyft order, I guess.
Other commuters we spoke to also expressed frustration over the lack of time slots available for the bus bridge. Transportation officials recommend travelers plan ahead for any delays. Construction crews continue working to stabilize the San Clemente railbed that called for the suspension of service in the first place. And the latest word is that passenger train service will resume in late February. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
County Supervisor Nora Vargas has been elected chair of Sandag, the county's transportation planning agency. Vargas said she would use the position to build consensus and achieve greater equity. The meeting was briefly disrupted by 9 board members walking out to protest the board's voting procedures, which give big cities more influence over transportation policy than small cities. San Diego City Council President Sean Elo Rivera called the walkout a tantrum.
Residents of the region of San Diego are counting on us to get things done here. And the idea that we're going to throw a fit and walk out of meetings if we think that things aren't going to go our way is not how democracy is supposed to work.
Ela Rivera was elected vice chair of the Sandag board. Sandag is tasked with implementing the state's climate goals, which depend on big reductions in driving and improvements to public transit. Gas prices may be settling down for your car, but not for the gas that you use to cook food and heat your home. SDSU's Mira Kopik tells us why the SDGE price hike is expected to be temporary in the Friday Business Report.
The average San Diegan is going to see their bill increase by over $120 a month on average, which is a lot of money. SDGE has put up a fund of about $1 million, which critics have said is certainly not enough, but they're looking to provide grants of $300 to $400 to individuals who meet certain conditions. You know, normally the month where the most gas is used by SDGE consumers, and there's 900,000 of us, is January. And we've had a cold, December and January, but you're going to see a lower price in February, and then it starts to decline fairly aggressively. The amount of gas people use in March, April, and May start to decline substantially through the summer and into the fall. So hopefully this is going to be a 1 or 2 month negative impact. And unfortunately, although there's good news on the inflation front, it's not good news for San Diego gas consumers.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, deadly storm.
Court transcripts show San Diego County Public Defender Randy Mize admitted under oath last month that he signed off on an investigative report knowing that it contained false statements. KPBS investigative reporter Amita Sharma has more.
Mize's admission came during the December trial of former Deputy Public Defender Zach Davina's successful wrongful termination lawsuit against the county.
Mr. Mize, he was, of course, under oath, under penalty of perjury, and he acknowledged that when he assigned and approved the official investigation report into Zach's complaints of discrimination and retaliation, that when he signed it, he knew it was false.
Davina's lawyer, Chris Ludmer, says that investigative report was the result of the Public Defender Office's HR probe into Davina's firing. The Superior Court jury sided with Davina in his case and awarded him $2.6 million in damages. The trial transcripts show Mize repeatedly acknowledged he knew that 4 of the 5 supervisors who sat on Davina's tenure review panel had made false statements. Panel members had known of a complaint Davina took to a colleague after appearing before the review panel, but they told the investigator they hadn't. According to the transcript, Ludmer then asked, "And you didn't do anything to correct them, did you?" Mize answered, "I missed it." Ludmer follows up with, "You missed something that directly bared on one of Mr. Davina's specific complaints of retaliation?" Mize responded, "I did." He also acknowledged reading the full investigative report before signing it. Mize did not respond to a request for comment. Neither did the 4 tenure review panel supervisors, Mignon Hiltz, Frank Barone, Sherry Stone, and Joe Super. Davina, who is gay, says a supervisor on the tenure review panel opened by asking him whether he was too flamboyant and animated and if that hurt his clients.
Their follow-up questions were very much like, "Oh, but are you sure you're being professional in court?" And it became very clear it wasn't a question of what is actually professional or what is actually right as a public defender, but why aren't you acting straight?
Right after the tenure review session ended, Davina complained to fellow Deputy Public Defender Jessica Enriquez that he felt discriminated against and harassed. Mize and the other supervisors labeled Davina's complaint a breach of confidentiality, according to court records. Mize acknowledged during the trial that the so-called breach had been discussed with those same panel members at a meeting on November 2nd, 2020, and they were angry that Davina disclosed what happened at his tenure review. But that's not what 4 of the 5 review panel members told the HR investigator. They said they never knew that Davina had complained to Enriquez about his treatment. Ludmer has harsh words for Mize.
Any senior public official doing something like that should immediately lose their job. The idea that the county would continue to pay our taxpayer dollars to keep someone in their job who's admitted to this kind of gross, unethical misconduct is shocking to me.
Ludmer urged the County Board of Supervisors to take strong action.
I hope that the Board of Supervisors will conduct an internal investigation, preferably by some outside law firm that is not tainted, and can hopefully make some findings and conclusions and recommendations on what should happen not only to Mr. Mize, but the entire senior leadership of that public defender's office.
KPBS reached out to the county administration and supervisors for comment. They said the matter will soon come to the board in closed session, and so it's inappropriate to comment at this time. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
The Biden administration again renewed the COVID-19 public health emergency this week. As cases rise again, there is a new campaign aimed at those who are at high risk. Mandy Gaither has more on how testing and early treatment could mean the difference between life and death.
In the U.S., a new Omicron subvariant is causing more COVID-19 cases. XBB.1.5 is continuing to spread, as is concern about a possible winter surge.
In the high-risk groups, people are coming to the hospital, and unfortunately, people are still dying from COVID-19.
That's why the American Lung Association launched a new campaign aimed at those at high risk of getting severely sick from COVID-19, including seniors and people with certain medical conditions like chronic lung disease. First, the organization says to get up to date on your COVID-19 vaccinations. That means getting the updated booster if eligible. Second, if you have symptoms of the virus, get tested. Treatment is most effective when done early.
We have some oral therapies that can be used within 5 days of symptom onset, and one IV therapy that can be used within a week of symptom onset.
If you're at high risk and test positive for COVID-19, talk to your doctor about the best treatment options for you.
A lot of information and misinformation being circulated. Our treatment options are good. They're being underutilized, particularly in inner city minority communities, populations that are underserved by the healthcare system in general.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Amid a week of severe weather, 2 alarming climate reports were released. Gloria Pazmino digs into the data and what it means for the future of our planet.
Torrential rain in the west, devastating tornadoes in the south. Wild weather events from coast to coast seem to underscore a pair of alarming new climate reports released Thursday by NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
2022 ranks as the 5th hottest year in record, and together with previous 8 years, it makes a total of 9 warmest years in record.
The data also revealing 2022 was the hottest La Nina year ever recorded, which experts say is significant because the La Nina phenomenon is usually responsible for cooling global temperatures.
If we would remove that cooling, and we can do that during models, 2022 would be much, much higher on this top list of the hottest years.
And while some of the extreme weather events experienced in the U.S. and around the globe are due to the natural atmospheric cycles, the severity and frequency of extreme weather is likely directly tied to the warming climate.
You're seeing stronger, higher intensity hurricanes, you see droughts, you see heat waves. The extremes are becoming more extreme.
And the warming climate, the result of human activity.
The increase in greenhouse gases that are human produced are actually causing the increase in heat and temperature.
NASA and NOAA say the goal of these reports is to provide the best data to the public and to policymakers, all in an effort to curb the growing climate crisis. Gloria Pazmino, KPBS News.
Well,
we have a lot to talk about, so let's start you off with your weather headlines. A mild Friday still, but we're changing things up heading into the weekend. Weekend storm is going to bring that return of rain, and we're even getting some snow. Sunday above 5,000 feet. So let's take a look at that drought monitor, though, as we've been experiencing that heavy rain continuing to pound the state. Just from the fall, October 4th of 2022, we are in that exceptional drought through central California, right around the San Joaquin Valley. But if we extended that northward there through north central California, still in that extreme category, but we have started to come down. We are now in that severe to moderate category throughout the state of California, as we have been experiencing torrential rainfall. Let's take a look at those numbers. Areas like San Francisco observed 18.5 inches. The normal there is 9.89 inches. And if we take our eye down south towards our region, San Diego, the normal is 3.67 inches, and we are already above that at 4.57 inches. Now, we do have this high surf advisory along the coast that's going to stick with us into the wee hours on the 16th. So through the weekend, tonight we're dropping down to a low of 51, mostly cloudy skies, but for tomorrow we'll hit highs in the 60s right around the coast. If we move more inland, a little cooler right around the mountains. Ramona at 57, Mount Laguna at 44 degrees, but even at Borrego Springs in the 60s. Futurecast, though, timing this out, we do have more rain again on the way, a drenching rain on the way throughout the day on Saturday, and then Saturday evening experiencing some heavier downpours too. And then as we head into Sunday, again, the mountains picking up some snow showers too, again, as low as 5,000 feet. Along the coast, it is going to be a wet weekend. We're in the upper 50s, low 60s, starting to warm up heading into next week. Very wet weekend, more inland too. Mountains in the upper 30s, low 40s, and then even around the desert, we're staying in the 60s, but it is going to be wet everywhere, keeping those showers with us through Tuesday. For KPBS News, I'm Bree Guy.
The rise of egg prices is affecting more than just the grocery stores. Childcare businesses and organizations who help people get nutritious food are also feeling the impact of this eggflation. KPBS reporter Melissa May has more.
Sarah Song is a family care provider in National City, and her husband cooks nutritious homemade meals for about 10 to 12 children. She says they both got a real shock recently when he went shopping for eggs to feed their young clients.
He said it was like $12. They're like $12. So he said, okay, I'm not going to get them here. I'll just stop at Ralph's on the way home. So then he went to Ralph's and they were even the same price.
You can blame the avian flu for the rising prices. According to the USDA, about 60 million birds have died from the disease so far. Fewer chickens means fewer eggs and higher prices. And that could mean changes for Song's meal plan.
If it's not easily accessible and the costs are the same, we'd probably change it next month or the month after.
But change isn't always easy when you're cooking for children.
It's going to be even harder to pick which menu items to put out there and see if they're even going to like it, because we know what they like, so it'll be hard to switch some things up.
Song estimates that her business's food costs have gone up by 25%, and she may have to increase the tuition for her daycare.
We might have to make an adjustment because obviously the return from the government isn't a lot. And if the prices keep going up and up and up, there's only so much leeway we can have with the expenses for it to be a healthy business model for us.
Even with their CalFresh benefits, it's just not enough.
Victoria Medina is the CalFresh manager at Feeding San Diego. CalFresh is a public benefit food program.
It is going to, and it is affecting families because, a lot of families have expressed that they go to the grocery store and now they're really doing like a plan A, plan B, okay, what is it that we really need for my family? What can we just kind of hold off?
Medina says many CalFresh clients are not just concerned about the high cost of goods, but those who are vegetarian or do not eat meat are now very limited. Plus, eggs are a staple for many family meals, especially for kids.
They always express, their favorite foods, and that being eggs, and how in the morning it's like a tradition that they have that, they have their eggs on the side with like a side of toast before they go to school. And definitely with, the eggs going up and not being able to find them at most grocery stores, it's negatively affecting them.
Feeding San Diego already anticipates that more people will need their food assistance and more will apply for benefits from CalFresh as the prices of food continue to rise. Melissa May, KPBS News.
It's been a tradition in San Diego for almost 4 decades. Hundreds came together this morning for the Martin Luther King Jr. Human Dignity Award breakfast. This was the first time the event hosted by the Jackie Robinson YMCA was held in person since the pandemic started. It was virtual for the last 2 years. One of this year's recipients was Tyra Hawthorne, the founder of Heartbeat Music and Performing Arts Academy.
I sat out in the audience during my first breakfast 11 years ago wondering how can I get up on this stage to get this award, and to have it happen 11 years later is like a dream.
David Dunn, head coach of the Lincoln High School football state champions, was the other recipient. Organizers say they want to thank all community members doing amazing work to keep Dr. King's legacy alive. The National Park Service is offering free entry to national parks on Monday. It's one of 5 days this year where entrance fees will be waived at more than 400 sites, and that includes Cabrillo National Monument here in San Diego. Given how popular the parks have become, it might be a good idea to check online for availability, though. If you can't make this one, there are other dates the national parks will be free, and those are April 22nd, August 4th, September 23rd, and November 11th, Veterans Day. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.